Hello, my name is Jamie Sparling. Welcome to the FormABLE Podcast. Today we're going to talk with Justin Morris of Third Heaven Martial Arts. Before we get going, hit that like and subscribe button. You'll be happy that you did. And if not, tell me about it in the comments section. Let's get going. Hello, my name is Jamie Sparling. Welcome to the FormABLE Podcast, where we talk about formable moments in life and in martial arts with martial artists from all around the country and around the world. Today, my guest is Justin Morris. Justin was my first Brazilian Jiu Jitsu instructor. He had a great impact on me as a person. To this day, 12, 15 years later, I don't even know. He's still there to help me and guide me, and he's just a phenomenal human being. And I just want to say thank you, Justin, and welcome to the FormABLE Podcast.
Well, thanks, Jamie. Jamie, that was such a nice introduction.
Well, it's only going to get better. It's only going to get better from
Yeah,
here, brother. Uh,
right.
One thing that I have always admired about you is your ability to be a tough martial arts instructor. In my mind, you are, okay? And you've fought MMA, you've competed jiu-jitsu. You are one of the first Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belts, or the first 5 here in Wisconsin.
I think I was number 6, but
Number
I should have
6.
been number 4, but I was a slow learner.
That's all right. You're a heck of a teacher. So number 6, I was pretty close, right? Not for
Yeah,
nothing.
I think it was 6.
So, how do you navigate being a gentle human being and also being, well, I'm going to call it a badass?
Wow, that's a great question, Jamie. How do I navigate that? Well, first of all, I'm not, the knowledge is up there, but
Mhm.
physically, as we get older, and especially me, since I've gotten a little older, I'm not as badass as I used to be right now. So I'm not looking to start any fights or anything like that anymore. Um, but I honestly think when you see martial artists, the majority of martial artists that I know, in most cases, people that are really good, they're really good at jujitsu or they're MMA fighters, they're usually like the nicest people off the mats.
Mm.
And I think one of the reasons for that is the confidence that the martial arts gives us. I think that somebody who has real confidence and they're a real martial artist and they're good at what they do, whether that be jiu-jitsu, MMA, or really any other martial art at all.
Mhm.
People that are really good at what they do in the martial arts, they generally have confidence and they can usually be super nice people and they don't have to be arrogant or bullies or anything like that off the mat. And I would say in my years of martial arts, and we've both been in martial arts for many, many years. I mean, I don't know how many years it is for you, Jimmy, but I think it's a little over 30 years for me. Probably same with you, I'd imagine, right? Our whole lives we've
Roughly.
spent doing martial art. And if we look back at people that we've trained with, and this is probably true for you, you look back at people you train with, and we meet all kinds of people on the mat. We train with all kinds of people, but the people that seem to be have like arrogance or the people that are kind of bullies are oftentimes the people that are not that great at the martial arts, right?
Yeah.
I've kind of seen that throughout the years. And so I feel that in most cases, good martial artists, because of the confidence martial arts has given us, is usually really nice people. I
I
try to be
agree.
nice. I've had my moments, but generally I'm pretty nice.
Well, nobody's perfect, right? One of the things about running a martial arts school is that people come to us for martial arts, but they're really wanting a package, something that's got some confidence, a sprinkle of getting through something rough in life,
Yeah.
a sprinkle of, I've always wanted to do this, but, and then the last part, like, is discipline. And I always felt weird when people would call martial arts a discipline. And I know that it is, but at the same time, it's just my love, right? I mean, part of it
Yeah.
is that I'm disciplined in how I practice. Uh, 7 out of 10 days, right? But for the most part, I would be doing martial arts whether I'm teaching it or not. And so I just love sharing things with people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, same here. I think most martial arts instructors, at least most good martial arts instructors would feel the same way. And when it
Mhm.
comes to like being a disciplined martial artist, I think that when you do something that you love, something you're passionate about, and something you always want to do, it's really easy to stay disciplined when you want to be there, when you want to be on the mats and you want to train. And so I think that in most cases, with most good martial artists, we kind of all have that same feeling. And and yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head about people when they come into martial arts that that the certain things that they're looking for, that the discipline being one of them. But I found with martial arts instructing is that if somebody comes and they want to fight and like, no, I just want to fight, and I want to do this one fight. I want to do an MMA fight one time or this tournament one time. Either I'm going to turn them into a true martial artist
Mhm.
where they discover that martial arts is more than that one fight. I'm either going to turn them into that true martial artist or I'm going to lose them. But the person that comes to us, or at least to me, that wants to discover something more in the martial arts, a larger journey, those are the people that tend to stick with it forever.
Mhm. One of the things I like to tell my students is when we go to some place like the Minnesota Kali Group and you see these lifelong friends of martial artists that have been together, you don't see a lot of puffed chest. You don't see a lot of things like that. You see hugs. There's
Yeah.
almost there's like a lack of fear there, right? And that's part of what martial arts kind of brings to us is uh sometimes a lack of fear to what people are thinking, or not that any of us are immune from that, right? But at the same time, when you would look out, I've had people that came with me that had been doing martial arts for a long time. I took them to a seminar and they were just flabbergasted at how welcoming and warm the environment was. And I had to think to myself, like, what was that all about? Hmm. Well, that guy you're talking about, he's former military and he has done things and been privy to things that the average bear isn't. So he's not worried about, what is anybody going to think if I run up and give this guy a big hug? You know what I mean?
I think when you're in those groups and you're giving people big hugs, just make sure you always have the underhooks just in case you got to throw
Always teaching, Justin.
them.
That's why one of the many reasons that I wanted you on there. Um, let's talk a little bit. What you just said a second ago really struck a chord with me. And the same thing was said with my own Brazilian Jiu Jitsu instructor at Affinity Martial Arts right now, Michael Hart. Okay. I told him once, well, he's a Jiu Jitsu guy. And he went, actually, I think of myself as a martial artist, you
Yeah.
know? And with that, he's trained in a bunch of disciplines, um, huge amount of knowledge, and lots of friends all over the place. Yourself, what martial arts have you trained in? And you don't have to go through them all, but what are some of the ones, especially that you offer at your academy, Third Heaven? Because it is an exceptional academy.
Sure. Thanks. Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate
You're
that. So
welcome.
yeah, so jujitsu is just a drop of water in the whole ocean of martial arts that I do.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about jujitsu, to just edify jujitsu real quick, is that when I started martial arts, when I was much younger, and I was doing like taekwondo and karate, and I found jujitsu. Jujitsu is like the first martial art that I found like could really work for me, where I was always like not very flexible, not super strong. I was like kind of the guy that always got my butt kicked. But after like 6 or 7 months of jujitsu, it was like I was doing the butt kicking, and it gave me all this confidence. And I really fell in love with jujitsu for that reason. But now here we are many, many years later.
Mm-hmm.
And I've realized that jujitsu is a part of that journey, but I love all kinds of different aspects of the martial arts. I have an online program And of course, I teach martial arts in my academy, but I'm actually, we haven't even talked about this, Jamie, but I'm getting ready to launch, which is going to be like the world's like largest Ninpo program online. And Ninpo, it's like ninjitsu, right? And so ninjitsu, a lot of people think like American Ninja or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but the reality is it is an absolutely beautiful martial art. It's one of the coolest curriculums I've ever seen. The self-defense is amazing. The weaponry is amazing. And so I've been studying that for many years, getting ready to launch this and kind of share my version of Ninpo with the world. And so I'm super excited about that. And to get good at that, I've actually had to go back and study a lot of Kung Fu. If you look historically in Ninpo, the original founder of Ninpo, he went to China and he learned Kung Fu. I had to go and study more Kung Fu to get better at it. I love lots of different variations of Kung Fu. I love Wing Chun. And I know you do a lot of Jeet Kune Do and trapping exercises, stuff like that. And you see a lot of that in Wing Chun. And I think there's a lot of synergy in those martial arts. I personally love kickboxing. I love Muay Thai kickboxing. I love boxing. I love a lot of different martial arts. Last year I received my black belt in judo, which was actually 2 years ago. I think 2 years ago I received my black belt in judo.
Congrats.
And
I didn't know
really
that,
cool.
brother.
Yeah, I never told you that, hey. And so the crazy thing about that is when I first started Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, I also started judo because I believed that it would take me forever to get my black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, which it did, by the way. But I figured judo would be so easy. I'll just get my black belt really quick in that. Well,
not so much.
Just got my black belt 2 years ago in judo. And so I love studying that. I think that really helped me develop a much better understanding of throwing people strategically on the mats. And it gave me a much better understanding of how to teach people. And once again, the things I learned in judo, the things I've learned in Kung Fu, things I've done in Jeet Kune Do, it kind of does flow a lot into this new Ninpo program I'm doing, which is super amazing. And of course, I still do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. And so I love the martial arts. I think they can do so much good for so many people. The martial arts have saved my life more than once in many different ways. And so I think if you have I don't think that there's like, oh, this style's better than that style, this style's better than that style. I think it's a personal journey. And if it's something you love being on that journey and that's what you like to do, then that's your martial art.
I agree. The individual has to really gravitate towards that thing. You know what I mean? And that's part of one of the reasons I love teaching Filipino martial arts is the traditional name is guru. It's a guru or guide. It's not the all-being person. I like to think of it as somebody who's just a little bit further up the hill, right? And they're going to show you how they got there, and that's always changing.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons I was excited. You've done a lot for me personally, and I just want to say thank you. And the other part is you put a certain, I don't know, you convinced me to seek Jesus a long time ago. And I'm incredibly ADD. A lot of times I don't remember half the techniques that you taught me, but I'll never forget that one line that you told me. You said, well, martial arts is great, but it's nothing like having a relationship with Jesus. And that was the first time anybody ever told this guy that I could have a relationship with a higher power. It was the very first time. Like a relationship, like that seemed crazy to me. And when I first moved to Wausau to be closer to my son, you totally supported that. And you told me to find a church, and I did. I also met my wife through that church. So how did you find those? Or do you find any connections between faith and fighting?
Yeah. I think that martial arts is, in often ways, it's a physical journey, but it's also a spiritual journey. And a testament to that is the martial arts throughout thousands and thousands of years has been like that. Now we can think that we're not training the way the samurai trained, where we might die on the battlefield, or we're not training the way the monks trained, where we might die on the battlefield. But I think that spiritualism has still kind of been a part of martial arts. And, and I believe we're saved by Jesus. I believe that Jesus died for us to pay for our sins, and that is the way to heaven. Jesus says that I'm the way, the truth, and the light. And I believe that that's the way to heaven. And so at my martial arts academy, I kind of thought that, we could put some spiritual things in my martial. How do I say this? I don't want to say put some spiritual things in, but I want it to be known. I want my students to know that I'm a Christian, which just means I follow Jesus, right? Mm-hmm. So I want my students to know that. And at the same time, I want everybody to feel comfortable at my martial arts school. So I would like anybody from any religion, any walk of life to come into my martial arts academy. So I don't want to be like pushy about it. But I at least want them to know that. And I love the opportunities to share that with people. And so, Jamie, I don't remember that I talked to you about Jesus at one time, but I'm glad I did, right? I'm glad I did. And so, I think that it's important. For me, it's very important to share that faith with people. And, my martial arts academy is called Third Heaven Martial Arts. Mm-hmm. And Third Heaven Martial Arts comes from a verse in the Bible. And it comes from a part in the book of Corinthians where the Apostle Paul, and I might get this a little bit off here, but I think he's like looking up at the heavens, and he makes a reference of the first heaven being like the sky, the second heaven being the universe, and the third heaven, a place where God is, like God sits in the third heaven. But what I've also come to know is that place where God is, it's a place of power. It's a place of authority. So by me calling Third Heaven Martial Arts, I'm in a way saying that we're a place where God is, and that we're a place of power and a place of authority, and that a power and authority that we only have from Jesus, from our Lord Jesus. Now, with all that said, when people walk into my martial arts academy, I don't hand them a Bible and ask them if they're Christians, mm-hmm. right? So I accept everybody, would love everyone to be there. I'm not pushy in any way or anything like that. But I had a martial arts instructor tell me about Jesus when I was about 16 or 17 years old.
Really?
And at that time, my mom was trying to tell me about God and people praying for me. I didn't know anything about God. I didn't like nothing at all. I didn't want anything to do with it. I mean, I was the opposite direction. I was like more into like Satanism and stuff like that. Like I was like into like super crazy death metal music. I don't know if any of your listeners would listen to like Slayer and Deicide and Obituary. I was like playing in a rock metal band, and it was like a black metal band. And I was like into really bad stuff. I was not interested at all to hear about Jesus. And it was a martial arts instructor that said, hey, Justin, we have a Bible study this Wednesday night. You think maybe you could come and check it out. And I kind of looked up to this martial arts instructor, and I said, well, all right, I will check it out. And I heard that night they had a certain thing planned for the Bible study, and the pastor took one look at me. You got to think about this. I'm like 16, 17 years old. I got long hair down to my waist, which there's nothing bad about that, right? That's all good, right? I have pretty nice hair. I probably could still grow it out long again. That's all good. But I had like long, one length hair, and I had this like jacket on with like a satanic pentagram, and I think I had an upside down cross necklace on. And the pastor took one look at me, and he was like, I think I'm going to change this all up. And this new guy that's coming in, I'm just going to tell him the basics about who Jesus is, what Jesus did for him, and how Jesus died for him. And I heard that message for the first time. And then ever since then, I always said, if I become a martial arts instructor, which I knew I was destined to be, I said, I'm always going to give glory back to God, and I'm always going to try to reach other people like I was reached. And so I said at the beginning of this podcast that my life has been saved by jiu-jitsu and martial arts. So my life has been saved many times by martial arts. It's been saved physically through different altercations that I was in. It's been saved through physical things. My life was saved in the fact that it's my profession, and I didn't really have any kind of college education or anything like that. And so I'm able to support my family through martial arts, but my soul was saved through Jesus. So my physical life was saved through martial arts, but my spiritual life was saved through Jesus. And so I will always make sure that people know that.
I think it's fascinating that you don't remember that you told me that, and that's okay, because we've known each other like quite over a decade now, easy, right? And so like there's a lot of time that lapsed in there. But what I heard and what made sense to me was, especially, I don't know, I'm hard-headed. You can't tell me certain things.
Yeah.
Certain people they don't have the authority maybe to tell me certain things.
Yeah, in
But
the same way.
my first martial arts teacher could tell me to do something, and I just went and did it. You know, I quit high school as most people in my family did. And I'll never forget when I decided to get my GED, we were going to spar, me and my instructor, and everybody had told me in my family, you should go back and get it. And I was thinking, you're acting, you're acting like a lunatic. I don't want to listen to what it is you have to say. But I was getting ready to spar with Steve, and literally, he touched, before he put his mouthpiece in, he was like, I really think you ought to do it. Mouthpiece goes in, touch gloves, all he had to say. 6 weeks later, I ran to bring him my GED. Right? And other people in my family were like, well, and my grandmother was saying, just leave him alone, okay? He got it. Whether he listened to you or whatever it is, this Steve Fristo got through to him, and that continued on. I don't know if I'm just hard-headed, right? And then later on, when you began helping me with my jiu-jitsu journey and helping me with my martial arts business journey, like I said, I don't remember all of the techniques that you taught me, but I remember one line that you said that was like, huh. And then I kind of brought that with me when I moved to Wausau, Wisconsin. And it served me so far, Thanks again. I really appreciate it.
Well, I think that you said something too, that, you listened to a martial arts instructor when you were younger, and I listened to a martial arts instructor. And when we think about that, someone who's a martial arts instructor and other things like coaches, teachers, we fall along those lines. It's a great responsibility. It's really important that us as martial arts instructors, that we continue being positive influences on people, because I'm not going to name names right now, but I could. There's some martial arts schools that I know where the instructors are negative influences on their students and their communities. And it's really important that we always strive to be, the best versions of ourselves that we can be, and be that positive influence, because we have that little bit of authority and people will oftentimes listen to us. There's so many times where parents bring their kids to me or teenagers to me, and they're like, okay, they won't listen to me, but maybe they'll listen to you. You know what I mean? And so I think it's really important that we always respect that responsibility that we have.
That position, that position.
That's a better way to put it. Yeah.
Oh, I think that position, no, you're right, comes with responsibility. And it takes a while to get that piece, when you're first learning how to teach, first learning to run a business, all those things. But end of the day, we measure our success not only by what we bring home to our families, but the measure of lives changed. And it's a small increment sometimes that we do. And sometimes it's large. Sometimes we don't even know. But I like the idea that you brought up being your best self. Because I don't know about you, sometimes I have a bad day. And then I know I'm going to go in and I'm going to go teach martial arts. And I get into the gym and I start moving around. And somehow something awakens inside of me where I have more to give. Where prior to that, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to get in the car.
Yeah.
It was a rough day. Now I shadow boxed 3 minutes. I did 2 minutes of double stick. Now I'm ready. And when the kids come in or the adults come in, I feel like I'm charged and ready to give them something.
I don't know how many times I've had a rough day. Things weren't going good. I don't want to go to class. And then I end up teaching my classes and, oh, this is amazing. Everything's great. I've had times when I felt sick. I'm like, I don't feel good. I don't want to go in. It's just last week, actually. We both were not feeling so great last week. And last week, I wasn't feeling good. I'm like, oh, I got to go in. There's going to be a ton of people there and I should just cancel. And then by the end of class, I was like, energized. This was awesome, and it always makes me feel better, And think about it, it makes us feel better. It does the same thing for our students as well. That's why they keep coming back.
Most definitely.
You charge.
Could you tell us a little bit about Third Heaven and the martial arts you do there? Which particular ones? I know we kind of started earlier, but I know you have a number of different programs, and for us on the FormABLE podcast, different styles of programs just gives more methods to help people. So we're always looking
Yeah.
to hear about them.
So Third Heaven Martial Arts started, I believe it was like 1990, somewhere between 95 and 97. I think 1997 is when I first like actually established that as a real business, but I think it kind of started around 95. So it's like going a long time, like, I don't know, math, like 30 years or something.
Mm-hmm.
Third Heaven Martial Arts, we've evolved a lot throughout the years. I started as just wanting to have partners to practice martial arts with me. I needed some jiu-jitsu partners. I needed some kung fu partners. I needed a boxing partner. I started like just looking for some partners.
Mm-hmm.
And it's evolved a lot since then. We have our main programs are, we have a kids program. The kids learn a blended style of martial arts. So even though, while I think most people consider me a jiu-jitsu academy, in my kids program, I don't have like a big tournament style jiu-jitsu kids class. We don't really do that with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it's bad or anything like that. It's just not what I decided to do.
Mm-hmm.
So in our kids program, it's a blended style that might look little more like a cross between like karate and kung fu. We do a couple jiu-jitsu moves. It's designed to build confidence. It's a super high energy class. We have some traditional martial art classes as well. Like I mentioned, my Ninpo program, where we do a lot of like traditional weaponry and traditional katas, and it's a very traditional class. So we have those two classes. And my most popular classes are my adult kickboxing program, which we call Third Heaven Martial Arts. So it's like a Third Heaven Martial Arts class. It has a really strong emphasis on kickboxing, but at the same time, there is some self-defense moves in there as well, but it's a very strong emphasis on kickboxing. It's a belt ranked class, so it's a ranked class where people can go from white belt to black belt. And then we also have our Brazilian Jiu Jitsu program. And I would say out of all those, the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu still is, my favorite class to teach. It's probably my most popular class, but all the other classes kind of funnel people into the Jiu Jitsu program. I don't get a lot of calls for jiu-jitsu, and jiu-jitsu can be a weird first class, but the kickboxing class is set up in a way where it's just very easy for a new student to come in. And then after they try that class and they get to know everybody, I generally try to convert them over to the jiu-jitsu program.
Mm-hmm.
We have other things going on as well. We have some fighters in class. We have some different things that we do. We have like a small kung fu program, but the kids class, traditional martial arts, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, that's kind of standard on a nightly basis.
How many students do you have right now, roughly?
I would say 80 to 100 in person and about the same amount online.
Oh, online program is going really well then, huh?
Yeah. And my online program is, people can sign up for free. A little plug here, teamthirdheaven.com. You can see you got me on that, teamthirdheaven.com. You can see a whole jiu-jitsu program we call first wave jiu-jitsu. We call it first wave jiu-jitsu because it very much emulates the beginning of jiu-jitsu in the United States, kind of like jiu-jitsu back in the 90s. There's not a lot of tournament focus going on.
Mm-hmm.
Not that that's bad or anything like that. It's just a different emphasis than I personally have on jiu-jitsu. And so it's a little bit more of the self-defense oriented jiu-jitsu. Obviously, it's jiu-jitsu, so we have all the grappling techniques, but we're more focusing on jiu-jitsu versus somebody else rather than jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu, which is kind of the tournament strategies.
Mm-hmm.
So we call it first wave jiu-jitsu, which just kind of represents that first wave of jiu-jitsu coming into the United States in the 90s. It's totally free. That's free. We have a lot of free courses on there. I think there's a martial arts success program that's free. There's a spiritual healing course, which is free, that we'll probably talk about in a little bit, Jamie. And then there's some paid courses as well, starting as low as like $9 a month. So I think I have about 100 people doing that.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. I just recently had pre-COVID, not recently, but I did an online curriculum for what they call the Ghost Elusive Boxing, which was created by Phil Norman. And
I like that name. It's a cool name.
Well, it's an amazing name. And then the story goes that his number one student had fought in a boxing match. And when his student Jake had won, he heard a coach yelling at Jake's opponent. And the opponent had said, I don't know what to say other than he was like a ghost. I couldn't hit him.
Cool.
And when I did the ghost boxing prior to that, well, like so many things, I had an opinion, but no experience.
Yeah.
And once I had that experience of learning the online curriculum, which was to get me jazzed for and get me prepared for the instructor program, I spent so much time and learned so much from the online curriculum, then met with the instructor and was able to put it together, that literally I thought to myself, this is one more time where the creator is showing Jamie that opinion isn't as powerful as experience, or experience trumps opinion, you know?
Well, let's talk about the online programs real quick. So online programs can get some negative kind of feedback, especially the jiu-jitsu. Oh, you're learning online, blah, 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 right? But now let's think about this. When I started Brazilian Jiu Jitsu in the early 90s, I had to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to fly all over the United States trying to learn little bits and pieces of jiu-jitsu. There was no online back then. There wasn't YouTube. There wasn't online courses. I would get, and not just me, but some of the other people that just started jiu-jitsu in the 90s would get like these VHS tapes. I was involved in a VHS tape trading network. There was about 50 VHS tapes out there. Some of them were absolutely horrific. Some of them were okay. They never really showed a complete jiu-jitsu strategy, but we were learning bits and pieces, flying all over the place. It was so hard to learn. All right. So that was, we're talking 25, 30 years ago. So about 30 years ago, it was really, really hard to learn the martial arts. But now let's talk about 60 years ago or 100 years ago. It was impossible to learn. Like imagine trying to learn Kung Fu or Muay Thai. You want to learn Muay Thai? You got to go to Thailand.
Change your whole life, everything.
Yeah.
Literally go up the side of the mountain. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And oftentimes with the old school martial arts instructors, you had to pay for it, not just with financially, but you had to pay for it with like everything you had. Or I've heard stories of people going to places like Thailand or China and like practically like just getting absolutely beat down before an instructor would teach you something. I remember even training back in like, I would say like early 90s, doing some Japanese jiu-jitsu and feeling as if I had to really prove myself to learn anything at all. But now with the development of the internet and online courses, we should all be, as martial arts instructors, we should all be learning as much from courses as we can, taking those little nuggets of information from those courses when we can, and we should be utilizing that to evolve the martial arts. Like right now, we have an opportunity to like literally evolve the martial arts. I mean, we can learn from Chinese masters, from Japanese masters, by just going online and watching this stuff. And so the course that I've put together, it's a very much an evolved system of martial arts. And so I think right now is the greatest time in the history of the world to be a martial artist if you're hungry for knowledge, because it's all at our fingertips.
It's all technology.
I think it's great.
Right? It's martial technology. And now we finally have the technology to be able to spread those things.
Yeah.
And at this time, I'd like to speak with the viewer about technology. If you have a moment, what I'd like for you to do is pause the broadcast, go like and subscribe, and also leave a comment about how you feel about online learning. I'm sure Justin and I would be very, very interested in contacting and speaking with you about it, as well as just knowing what the general public feels about online learning in martial arts. Back in the day, you couldn't go to college online, and now almost nobody actually goes to school. Everything's done online. And as long as we have that discipline, maybe that we spoke about earlier, we'll be able to move forward. So please do me a favor. Leave us a comment, especially a question, and we'll get back to you. And we will take it into account as we move forward in the online learning platforms. Justin.
Somebody's going to say in a comment, they're going to say, so I'm just going to address this right away. Somebody's going to say, well, you have to feel it agree. You have to feel it. You have to feel
Mhm.
jujitsu. You have to feel the flow of different techniques. You need an instructor at some point to feel it. However, if you can't be with that instructor every day, you can learn a lot by watching. You get a lot of knowledge from watching.
Mhm.
So, like, let's say you can only see an instructor once a month or something like that, or even once a week. Well, why not take those other days and absorb as much knowledge as you can, so that when you get in front of your instructor, you have a lot more. You can go so much further, so faster. Okay, just wanted to address that.
No, I really appreciate that. And that's absolutely true. And without a doubt, I mean, I do believe that having some experience in martial arts with an instructor right in front of you will always help. As a matter of fact, I don't know that I could have learned as much about the boxing system if I hadn't already done martial arts for 20 years, right?
Right.
So all
Good
those
point.
things are to take into account. But like you said, and one of my gurus, Guru Rick Faye, says a lot, you know, the generation before had to change their entire life in order to learn some of the things that now, quite honestly, martial arts teachers are taking on the road and doing seminars. I'm an instructor under Guru Dan Osano, who, in my opinion, is the best martial arts instructor in the world. And I can only see him once or twice per year. And it's funny that when I talk about my first seminar, all I knew was I saw a tip of the mountain, and there was this
Mhm.
thing called Poxow Lopsow, and there was this thing that was called the running attack of San Miguel. 30 years later, I got to see Guru just this last year, and I'm not saying I knew everything, but I'm back to taking away one thing now. It's like you go to see the instructor and you can just kind of tighten one nut, right?
Yeah. Yep. It's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I think it's
Definitely.
so important. We want to share ourselves, right? And share our experience, share our strength, share our hope, and that's part of the online piece. And I have one student who drives an hour and a half twice a week to come learn the Filipino martial arts and to come to Affinity Martial Arts and do what we call our AIM program, which is Affinity Integrated Martial Arts. And what it is Kali, Jeet Kune Do, Majapahit Silat, as well as some Jiu-Jitsu, right? And
Yeah.
then with all those arts, you have some boxing, some kickboxing, some takedowns, some trapping, some clinching, and they all fit together really, really nice. Justin,
Yep.
could I ask you a little bit about the spiritual development course again? Uh, I know we wanted to talk about that, and also, would you like to share your story of healing?
Yeah. I think that's what led to that spiritual development course. So on February 10th, Jamie knows my story, but people listening would probably not know my story. On February 10th of 2017, I was involved in an accident. I slipped on the ice. I was ice fishing. And so I slipped on the ice, which, by the way, I've ice fished 1,000 times. I still ice fish, right? So I still ice fish. But I slipped on the ice and my feet went up in the air. It didn't matter how good I was at martial art break falls. There was no stopping this. My feet went way up in the air and the back of my head hit the ice and I hit my head right there. And I destroyed something here called the suboccipital muscle. And I suffered from a traumatic brain injury.
Hmm.
And so I kept fishing that day. I caught a big fish. Everything was good, but I mean, I knew my head was really messed up. And all the time of being in martial arts, I've never been hit this hard. I mean, this was like unbelievable how hard I got hit. Came home, my ears were ringing really loud, but I felt like I was okay. But I woke up the next day very confused. I didn't really understand where I was or who I was. It was just very confusing. And and from that day, that was February 10th or February 11th, 2017. From that day, it's been a really long journey of dealing with a brain injury. And so that injury, instead of getting better, just kept getting worse and worse and worse. For the first year, I was in bed for almost a year. able to kind of get up, go to the couch, and then walk back to bed, but not really able to teach my classes much or really do anything. I stuttered a lot. So prior to a healing that I had, which I'll talk about, I wouldn't have been able to do this because oftentimes I would say a word and just repeat the same word for like 20 minutes straight. I couldn't get past the word. Like my brain wouldn't let me past it. I was having seizures and kept trying to go back to martial arts, kept trying to do everything, but like just nothing worked. I went to every doctor, and then my wife would not allow me to give up. So for like 7 years, I had a new doctor every 6 months. I tried a new thing. I did everything I could and nothing worked. And now imagine this, like anytime I took a step, it shook my head a little bit and it would hurt my head. Every time I throw a punch, like, you throw a punch and your head moves a little bit. So I couldn't throw a punch. I couldn't do anything. I could just sit there. I'd teach classes like this with my head in my hands. I couldn't do anything. Thank God I had like strong leadership already established in my martial arts school. And so the martial arts school survived without me at that time. But it was rough, you guys. And so things were getting very bad for me. Pretty much the peak of my injury, and then I had some family problems going on at the same time. So the family problems were regarding one of my kids, where he had found himself in a difficult situation. Hey, hold on, that my screen paused for a second. I'm back. So family problems were regarding I kind of lost a kid to, he's not lost, he's still here, but I mean, he suffered from alcohol and drug abuse, and I kind of lost him in my life. He's still alive right now. He's still struggling. He's still facing that battle. But with my head injury at the peak and the situation I had with my own son, I was not thinking, but I was ready to end my life. I don't know how much I've shared that with you, Jamie.
A little bit, yeah.
So things were tough. And, I'm a Christian, and I was a Christian. I became a Christian when I was 17 years old. Mm-hmm. Being a Christian just means you believe that Jesus died for you to pay for your sins, and that you believe in that, you accept that the Bible says if you believe in your heart that Jesus died for you, and you profess it with your mouth, that you're saved. That's all it takes. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to go to church. You don't have to do a bunch of good things. It doesn't matter who you are, as long as you believe that by faith, that then you're a Christian. Mm-hmm. So I was a Christian, but also I didn't believe that really a lot of miracles were happening. I didn't really believe that there's any reason for God to kind of intervene and create a miracle in my life. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I understand.
Working really hard to try to fix my head on my own, going to every doctor. Nothing's going to work. And I have a student of mine who's a pastor, which, by the way, God has sent me many pastors throughout the years. So many pastors. And I've led some Bible studies. I've preached at churches before. But at this point in my life, I was not done with God, but I'd kind of been like, I'm done with going to church. I'm done with talking about it. And I'm just like, whatever.
Felt defeated. That's what it sounds like. Just defeated.
What's that?
It sounds like you felt defeated, like just drained.
I felt very defeated. And my prayers were very much like, God, it is what it is. That's what my prayer was. It's like, I'm not mad at you, God. I know that, there's a thing called ice cleats that I could have put on my boots that could have stopped me from falling, and I chose not to, right? It's free will. God didn't make me hit my head. My son, he had free will to start abusing drugs and things like that. So he had free will to do that. I didn't blame God. Mm-hmm. And if there's anyone out there that's blaming God for something right now, I know how difficult. I know there's a struggle, right? I'm not putting anyone down for it, but I just want to say personally, I didn't blame God. But I also was like, but God, we're just not going to talk anymore. Like, I'm just done. I'm done with you. Mm-hmm. Right. That's how I felt. And I have a student of mine, Roger and Melissa are pastors of a church, and Roger kept trying to get me to go to church with him. And I've had plenty of other pastors try to get me to go to church. And I was just like, I don't really want to, I kind of know what Jesus did for me and all that stuff. I'm not that interested. And one day Roger said, Justin, there is healing at this church. There's healing through Jesus. You could have the best year of your life. And I was like thinking of ending my life. I was hurting. And he knew I was hurting. That's why he talked to me about that. But I wasn't excited that he talked to me. I was mad. I was like, yeah, this dude thinks I'm going to have the best year of my life. Like, he obviously doesn't know what I'm going through. Like, he doesn't know what my life is like right now. Like, I was thinking the best years are behind me. I used to be this amazing martial artist, and now I can barely move, and I'm having seizures, and my kid's gone. And I just had problem after problem after problem. I just spewed out of my mouth, just couldn't find anything positive. And it was my daughter who had been reading the Bible and was trying to encourage us to go to church. She was only 12 at the time. She's 12 years old at the time.
A little angel.
Yeah. And there was a Christmas Eve service at the church. And we're coming up on Christmas Eve. So we're getting close to it right now. So I decided that I would go to this Rogers church for Christmas Eve. And I picked Christmas Eve because that's a great time to go to church and never go back to church.
That's the most popular time to go to church and never go back to church. Yeah, brother. Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
We're going to go Christmas Eve, and then we're never going to go back to church again because and we made it. We did it one time and we're good. So I went to church Christmas Eve, and it was tough, man. It was like God kind of was talking to me, kind of softening my heart, and through the worship music and the prayer, I kind of felt like maybe I could get better. And I started hearing testimonies of people being healed, people saying that the healing that was talked about 2,000 years ago in the Bible could be for right now. But there's nowhere in the Bible it says that healing stopped.
There was no expiration date that we saw, right?
Healing could be for right now. And for a couple of weeks, I was guarded, but I kept going to church. And I kept talking to the people at church, and I kept talking to the pastor and some other people. And there's a little bit more to the story. But after a few weeks, one day I walked into that church. My shoe was untied. And I bent over to tie my shoe. Well, when my shoe was untied, my wife was standing next to me. She goes, "You want me to tie your shoe?" I said, "No, I've got it." Now, this is significant because I could not bend over to tie my shoe because I couldn't move my head. So I bent over to tie my shoe, and we both looked up, and I was like, "Well, that's weird. I just tied my shoe." And I was like, I don't hear any ringing in my head right now. And I started thinking, I haven't really been stuttering or anything. I haven't had any seizures this week. And there was a man there, John. He was in the entryway, who's become a very influential person in my life. He took by the way, he does not know about my head injury. He doesn't know, this person, John, didn't really know exactly where the head injury was. He just knew a little tiny bit about me. The older gentleman, and he took his fingers and he touched my head. And he said, "I've been praying for this spot on your head." And he put his fingers right here, but this is a suboccipital muscle. And when he touched it, I was like, wait a second. Hold on a second, touch that again. And I touched it. And prior to this, when you touched my head, it was mush right there. It was mushy. And it was mushy. And if I touched it even a little bit, it would feel like a knife going into the back of my skull. And so I touched it and look, it's fine. It's there. The muscle's back. The muscle's intact. And it doesn't hurt when I touch it. And so I try in the weirdest way to explain this to this guy who's touching my head. And I don't even know who this guy is. And he walks out of the church and he goes,
"It's okay, brother. You take your time. You take your time."
Yeah, they're happy tears, right? Yeah. So this guy walks out in the parking lot, and I see him outside. He's got his hands in there, and he's praising God, and the dude's crying and stuff, in the parking lot. And I'm like, these people at this church, they prayed for my head. And the Bible says that with the faith the size of a mustard seed, we could move a mountain. And I had that faith. It wasn't a lot, but I had the faith the size of a mustard seed that my head could be healed. And from that moment, my head has been healed. I have had no problems. I've been able to do jiu-jitsu again. One of the greatest victories is I was fishing a lake in Alabama with my son Leo. 50-mile-an-hour winds came up, really far away from the boat launch. We got a really fast boat. And Leo looked at me and he said, "Dad, how are we going to get back? So you can't hit these waves with your head. I mean, one wave would kill me, right?" And I said, "Leo, my head is healed." I said, "Drive through the waves." And we did. And, that testimony, that testimony was the thing that turned, one of the things that turned my son Leo to God. Now my son Leo's been healed in different ways, right? And we all have different things that we need healed in our lives, right? My wife was healed from anxiety and depression because my head injury was so bad, and because of the things that I was going through. My wife stopped eating. She stopped going out in public. Now we're 1 year later, and my wife and I have become leaders at that church. Right now, we are working on the works. God's working it all out for us, but we're working on starting this church is a little far away from us, so we're working on actually starting a church in our own community. We've seen a lot of people come to know the Lord. We've seen a lot of people healed. I've learned that God's healing and miracles are not just for 2,000 years ago, but they're for today. They're for right now. And that not only can God heal you right now and whatever it is you're going through, but it's God's ultimate will to heal you. And good things can come out of bad experiences. When I hit my head, I started a marketing company and we're crushing it. When I hit my head, I developed new leaders in my martial arts school. I developed my online program because I wanted to be able to go on after I'm gone. I wanted there to be something for me. So I developed my online program. We started going to this church. Good things can happen through bad experiences, but it's not God's will for anything bad to happen. God always wants the best to happen for you. But it seems like when challenging things come and difficult things come, if you turn to God, that God can work those around for good oftentimes. And it's always God's will for them to work for good. And anyone listening to this right now, the great thing is that you can think I'm crazy. You can think that, wow, that dude's nuts, right? I would have too. And I would have also. When I was going to the church for the first time and people were coming up saying they were healed in certain ways, I thought they were crazy too. But my testimony speaks for itself. You can think that I'm crazy, but just know that a year ago, I couldn't bend over to show a jiu-jitsu move. And right now I'll take you on the mat. It's fine. You know what I mean? And the only thing that changed was Jesus, was God's supernatural healing, was me looking for that healing and accepting that healing. So while I was a Christian and I was saved by grace through faith, I now believe in healing and miracles. And my hope is to share that with other people, because I know people are going through a lot right now. And so my hope is to share that with people.
Could you share something with our viewers, like a choice or an action that they could do in the next 24 hours that might help them make their life a little bit better? Or martial arts training.
A choice or an action in the next 24 hours that could make their life a little bit better. Yeah, stop and be grateful for what you have right now. That's it. Because sometimes we think of how good we had it in the past or where we need to be in the future. But we're here right now. And we have a lot of things to be grateful for right now. And so obviously it can be applied for anything in your life, but stop and be grateful for the thing you have in your life, the things you have in your life right now, right this moment, because you're living and breathing. I'm sure it's a lot. Sometimes we forget to be grateful for those things. We will do one of two things. We think about where we need to be in the future. We think about the things we had in the past, but sometimes we forget about the here and now.
Isn't that the truth? I mean, absolutely. Yeah. And It's funny. I mean, we could say this is about faith. The title is Faith and Fighting. However, there's scientific studies that are done on the power of gratitude.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Gratitude.
It's hard to.
Go ahead, brother.
I think it's hard to achieve more. Also, we're looking at the new year right now, 2025, and a lot of people want to achieve more in 2025. But you got to be grateful for what you have right now, I think, before getting more. Right.
Well, that makes
So,
sense. That makes
yeah,
sense if you think about it. I mean, why would we get more unless we're happy
yeah.
with what we have? Justin, I really appreciate you coming in to talk to us here about the FormABLE Podcast. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience, brother?
Oh man, Jamie, I could talk and talk and talk, but I want to thank you for having me on today. I think it was great, and I think one thing that I would share is that if somebody out there is interested in knowing about the power of healing, interested in knowing about the power that we have in Jesus, I do have free training at teamthirdheaven.com, and I'm very easy to talk to. My email address is on there, my phone number's on there. I would be more than happy to speak to anybody about that. And so you're more than like, if someone's seeing this right now and, whether you think I'm crazy or whether you're intrigued, I would love to talk to you about that.
It's a fine line between being intrigued and thinking somebody's crazy. Like, not for nothing.
Right?
So, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that really could go either way.
Good.
You have such a great story. Do you have anyone that you could recommend that I contact to come on our show and and has a great story? It doesn't have to be about faith, just just a martial artist, somebody that well, I'll say this. Everybody's fighting a fight that we don't know about. And some of the greatest people I know in martial arts or in life in general, you get to know their story. You could become so taken with them on how they got there. You know what I mean?
I, I don't know a lot about this particular person's story, but for some reason, a person named Manny Sanchez comes to mind. I have a real good feeling about this guy. He's a professional fighter. He has a very, very good record. He's going to go places. Um, he lives near me. And one day I was cleaning my mats and I look out the window and someone pulled in the parking lot. And I was like, is that Manny Sanchez in the parking lot? That's so weird, right? And then it turns out he was just meeting one of my guys. But he's fought, man, I don't know. I don't follow MMA too much anymore, but I think he's a Bellator guy. I don't know if he's in the UFC right now. I think it's Bellator, but he's going to go places. And I just have he's got a very positive vibe about him. He's a very like attractive kind of character person where people like want to be around him and want to talk to him. And I see a lot of his social posts. It's very positive. And we've talked a few times. I know that he knows my story, but I don't really know his story, but I think he would be a good guy for you to have.
I see that when I popped that question on you, you went with your instincts. Just something that came to you, right?
Just kind of popped in my mind.
Pardon me, I'm getting over something.
Yeah.
Does faith, whether it be in a higher power, Jesus, or a religion, or even in martial arts, do you feel that faith in something helps us to follow our instincts?
Well, that's a tough question. I 100% do. This could be a question that takes us a very long route, but I think the world is more spiritual than we often think it is. And so I didn't, until this healing, I didn't believe this. I believed in Jesus. I believed in all that stuff, but I didn't really feel that we were in a very spiritual world or spiritual realm. It's just all physical. But I have a different opinion on this now. And I have the belief now that we are much more spiritual than we think we are. And I think that if we stay connected to our spirit, and once again, I want to say that this all, for me, all comes from the Bible and from Jesus, but I just want to say that I think that, spiritually we can be led different ways in our life. And now that I'm open to being connected spiritually to things, I've been being led in many, many different ways. And it is almost as if God has lit a different path for me in different ways. And I think we can often be closed off to that, where, it's like we have a spirit inside of us, we're spiritual, but we shove it down and shove it down and shove it down. And I think when you're open to it and you start to think on these things and start to believe on these things, I think that we're often led different ways in our life. And I'm coming to that from a Christian perspective. I want to make that clear that I believe in Jesus, and then I'm coming from a Christian perspective. As far as other spiritualism or religions go, I'm not totally sure. But for me, I know that God has really kind of made a path for me in different areas where it's been, I feel like if I say too much, like people will think I'm crazy. So I'm hesitant about what I'm going to say. But to answer your question, I think, yes, we are very spiritual, and I think that a mistake of the church, and I think that's something that God could be, not that God's disappointed, but something that God could be disappointed with, is that we've kind of put this all down, like the church has basically, not all of them, but a lot of them just make it more physical and less spiritual. And that's hard to explain. You know what I mean?
That makes sense. They're all people with egos, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time,
let me say it a different way.
Okay, thank you.
It's important to listen.
Yes, it is.
That's how I'm going to say it. I've been struggling with my words on this one, but we try to do everything in the natural. And so, for example, I've been a Christian for a long time. So reading my Bible, trying to do this, trying to do that, trying to do things in the natural, but I didn't always stop to listen. And if we train ourselves to listen, there is a whisper that God will tell us. And sometimes that whisper can become a shout. And God will lead us and direct us, but we have to be willing to listen. So I think that's how I'm going to answer that.
That is a great answer, by the way, brother. And myself too, Christian, but I also, being someone that does multiple different systems with different cultures, I see the essence of that sometimes in different cultures. And there was a saying someone told me that came from Buddhism that says the essence of God is in the moment. And that makes a lot of sense. And I really appreciate you coming and sharing yourself with us, brother. Okay. And just
Thanks, Jim.
thank you. And people think that you're a little crazy. They probably think I'm a little crazy for bringing you on, and they're right. Let them have it. That's okay, right? If that's the ego wants to dismiss things. But since we reconnected, and prior, you've been a big influence on my life and Affinity Martial Arts, and I believe that we're supposed to connect at this time, right now, to tell this story. And I really appreciate you.
I think so. I think that's awesome that you said that, Jamie. And I think that, I don't know exactly how you answered that or asked that first initial question that I kind of struggled with, but here is us listening, because we were supposed to connect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So cool.
Justin, thank you for your time.
All right. I love you, buddy. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. Keep smiling. Have a good day. Keep praying. And next time, for the love of God, put the little fishing cleats on. Okay? Please. Right?
Yeah, right.
All right. Thank you, brother. Man. I'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.